Welcome to Five Questions. I am your host, sadly, your questionnaire, Kevin King. With me today is Alan Hazelden, the juggler, the completer of MegaGurp, but mainly the game developer of such free browser games as Brick Smash Smash, You're Pulling My Leg, and Cyber-Lasso. His latest work, Sokoban, is best described as something of a sliding puzzle game with chemistry at its core and bringing bonding elements together. I would describe Alan's work as something of a retro in style, but very forward-looking in mechanics and in their nature. I want to thank you for coming on Five Questions today, Alan.
Yeah,
Are
thanks
you
for having
ready?
me.
Well, I'm sorry.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's do this. So, to me, anyway, puzzle games are your main mode of development. You know, Sakoban, You're Pulling My Leg, and the one I recommended in a recent episode of One More Turn, Cyber-Lasso. All of them use puzzles in various ways to kind of achieve their full potential as games. In your opinion, what is it about puzzle mechanics that makes them so suitable to gaming, and why do you like developing puzzle games, and kind of how would you define your? I've defined it as puzzle game, but how would you define your own style in development?
Yeah, so I like puzzle games primarily because they make you think. You can't just idly sit through and like just do it by by um, by just feeling it out. You need to actually think and plan ahead, and you'll have problems that you run into, and they'll force you to go, oh no, this assumption I've made previously, that was all wrong. I actually have to do this thing. Like that's a mode of thinking which you don't get in a shmup, for example. I
Hmm.
guess I like I like playing that kind of game, and I it's also kind of similar. Making a puzzle game is kind of a puzzle game in of itself, which is something I enjoy.
Well, how
I guess
so? How so is it like a puzzle game?
so. You have these gameplay elements, and you've maybe got a puzzle in mind in your head for a specific level, and you know, okay, I want to force the player to have to do this neat trick. Maybe it's a trick that they'll need a lot later in the game, and so you need to make a level to force them to understand this is something I can do with these mechanics. But then you've got to construct a level which for which the only solution is to use this trick. But ideally, it doesn't make it blindingly obvious. It doesn't just you don't pop up a text bubble saying, "Hey, did you know you can do this?" I prefer to teach these things just using mechanics, and so I will try and create a level which, um, by the process of trying to solve it, you have this realization about the mechanics of what you're doing, um, and making that level will involve a process of iterating and go, okay, can I do this? No, because there's this simpler solution that doesn't involve what I want the player to do, or can I do this? No, that makes it impossible for this reason. And that process of trying to create something and working on it and changing it to improve it is actually similar to the problem solving process of you've got a level in front of you that you're trying to solve. You try different things, and some of them work and some of them don't.
Would like I said, I've defined it as puzzle style in your development, but I mean, how would you define yourself then?
I guess I'd say I try and make elegant elegant systems. So things that maybe don't have a lot of different components to learn, but that those components interact in a interesting ways.
Okay. Sticking with kind of the puzzle idea, I'm you know, I don't have the scientific data to back me up on this one, but I've just kind of read and that people kind of learn best when they can kind of play through a scenario or a concept. Uh, Personally speaking, I probably know more about Greek mythology based on my playing, RPGs than I do actually studying literature, which was my major. And your latest Sokobom seems to take this idea to the world of chemistry, with its playful teaching of elemental bonds. And with Sokobon, I'm curious where did this idea spring from, and I'm wondering how you feel about it straddling that line between this fun puzzler game and the quote unquote educational game that sometimes has its own people have their hangups when they're talking about educational games.
Yeah, an educational game is kind of a bad word. Um, so in the game, it was a collaboration between me and Harry Lee, who's an Australian game developer, who's incredibly talented, and he came up with the original idea for Soccer Bond. At the time, he was studying medicine, and so as part of that, you have to learn a decent amount of chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were just saying, "Oh, hey, let's make a game this evening, a quick jam game. Maybe spend a few hours on it and like see what comes of it." Obviously, took slightly more than a few hours to make. Ended up taking a year and a half. But that core idea of taking a block pushing game, but instead of blocks, you've got atoms, and then they bond together in ways determined by the number of bonds each element has. So that was his idea, and then it was a case of choosing where to take it. And to me, it's very important that Soccer Bond is a puzzle game first.
Mm-hmm.
It's not aiming to be educational. Any educational side effects it has are purely accidental, or not accidental, but they're not the focus. So
This shouldn't be
we,
taught in chemistry classes, is what you're saying.
well, you could use it in chemistry classes, but I think the only reason it could work in that context is because we had the goal of trying to be fun rather than trying to be educational. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are educational aspects of it, but I don't think it would be a good game if we'd focused on that. I think if if you have your goal as I'm going to make something educational, then that will probably mean that it won't be fun enough to make people stick with it. And so, no matter how much educational content there is there,
Mm-hmm.
you won't have people actually engaging with it, and so they won't pick up on most of what you're trying to teach them. Whereas if you create something that's actually engaging, then the stuff that's kind of there in a like not like it's just there because that's the context of the game. It's about
Mm-hmm.
chemistry, so there's some chemistry concepts still there, and so by playing this thing, which is it's a puzzle game, by
Mm-hmm.
playing it, you will pick up some of these concepts.
Yeah, like that's what I was saying about the RPG stuff. It's those are fun first, before they are whatever they teach me is almost like subliminal, you know.
Mm.
And in that way, that's kind of what I got from Sakopon. It's just like it's puzzler first, fun first, interesting first, and then if someone absorbs a little knowledge out of it, more the better, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
and we did make a few concessions to science in making it. Like
yeah.
I tried very hard to make sure that every level in the game, you're creating a real molecule that actually exists, and then that means that we can have real facts about those molecules come up when you complete the level. Um, but that wasn't the focus. Like I made loads of levels during development that just happened not to create real molecules.
You're just
But then
inventing elements, just like just like what are
I'm not
or
inventing elements.
no,
I'm
I know.
actually sticking to that. Well, yeah, I mean, you can go down the space game route of
Yeah,
making up elements too. But yeah, just I'd throw some atoms into a level and play around and see what I made. And if it was an interesting puzzle, I'd keep it around. But
yeah,
then during the course of development, I would try and find ways to take those levels and then make them into a level that actually had a real molecule, but not at the cost of hurting the gameplay.
yeah. So, Soko or Soko? I feel like I'm getting this
I say
pronouncing this wrong.
soccer, but
Sako.
whatever.
So, Sokoban is from. I mean, doing research. I think it's the first game of yours I've seen that you're charging, at least for the newest version of it. But most of your, you've had this habit in the past of releasing most of your games for free. And I was kind of curious, transitioning a bit here. You know, uh, why is free gaming important to you as a developer? And is there kind of a point in the future you might consider charging people regularly, or and if so, why so? And conversely, if not, why not? Is I guess what I'm asking is, you know, how, ultimately what I'm asking is, why is free gaming um, why is free gaming important to you?
So Soccer Bond is actually the second
Hmm.
paid game I made, but it's the first PC game I released commercially. I also released one of my games. It's available as a Flash game freely online, but also as a paid iOS and Android game. It's called These Robotic Hearts of Mine. And in hindsight, I have mixed feelings about how I feel about it, but that's not the point. Um, but yeah, like so, I really like making small games, like for a game jam or something, like spending a weekend making something, and then when you're done, you don't have the pressure to turn it into some big commercial project. Like commercial projects are really draining, and like I couldn't just work on big projects like that. I would burn out.
Hmm.
Um, and so just creatively, it's massively rewarding to be able uh, to just create something and release it for free because like the amount of work you need to do to create something that you're charging for is astronomically larger than the amount of work you need to do for something that you can just put up for free online. Just because the level of expectation surrounding that is so much higher. So like it's creatively rewarding to be able to make a game and release it for free. Um, like I've always been doing this just as a hobby. Like
Hmm.
if if I don't make enough money from games to live off, then that's fine. Like I don't want the pressure of having to be commercially successful to make games because that would detract from why I'm doing it in the first place, which is just to make interesting things. Um, so one thing I have started doing like a few months ago, I set up a Patreon
Hmm.
for the monthly free games. Patreon is a website where you can go, like people can go and they can pledge a certain amount per month to me just to support me. So I say I will make one game a month and I will release it for free. And if you like the sound of that, you can give me money each month to support that.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll make sure to post that in the liner notes as well as the YouTube video. It's at patreon.com/draknek, right?
that's right.
DRAKNEK.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I encourage people listening to go there. It also, you briefly kind of go over your philosophy on design as well. It's get to know the developers a little bit, people. uh, so kind of staying in this vein a little bit. A lot of these free browser games, they evoke an older style of gaming. Specifically, I mean, they remind me of often PC gaming in the '80s in terms of their style. For you specifically, you have Brick Smash Smash. It's this incredibly intriguing variant on the breakout model. The crass shit snake takes this, the self-imposed maze game. If you ever played the light cycles in an old version of Tron, you might know what I'm talking about here. And it turns that into something kind of profane and fun and silly. You're 27. I have to ask this. You're 27. Most of these styles of games were, well past their sunsets in popularity. When I would assume you were in your younger years of game playing. How did you hear about these styles? Why did you decide to build in such older styles with such, quote unquote older mechanics? What is it about it that's appealing to you, or is it appealing?
Well, so I mean, you say like, how did I hear about these games? But everyone knows these games. Like, everyone knows Snake. Everyone knows Breakout. Not everyone knows them by name. Um, like, if I say Breakout, then not everybody will go, oh, that game. But if I say you've got a thing moving at the bottom and you're trying to keep a ball in the thing, and then you're hitting bricks and they go away. Like, everybody has played that at some point. Um, but I guess what's appealing to them, to me, is that they're really easy to implement, at least compared to like modern games. Like, you can make a Snake clone in a matter of hours. Um, like, if you know what you're doing, but even if you don't know what you're doing, it's a really good way to learn how to do these things. Like, they're not super complicated. They're a good introduction to game development. But also, like, they're also a good introduction to game development because in terms of design, there's plenty of interesting twists that you can add to these games to make them interesting. I like Brick Smash is Breakout, but with a twist. Shit Snake is Snake, but with a twist. And I think that's an interesting design problem, and it's a promising way of coming up with fun systems.
Yeah, I really like Brick Smash. I gotta be honest with you. The fact that you're playing breakout within the bricks that you're breaking out, I thought that was absolutely amazing. I haven't gotten all the way through all 16 yet, but it's fantastic. Like, it's if you like the breakout model at all, it's great. It's really fantastic. But kind of getting to the end here. Speaking of Shit Snake, I really enjoyed your Twine-based sequel of it, Shit Snake 2, Shit Harder. I know if you're listening at home that title sounds crass. As crass as it is, though, I have to say that Twine game, is ultimately about kind of this, player's relationship with a game versus his or her relationship with a significant other, or a parent, or someone who doesn't have that same relationship with that game. You do it in this very comical and so kind of, you have this depreciation about it. But I'm curious about your thoughts on if there's a kind of a bit of truth in that idea of the, addictive quality of gaming, or at least, beating puzzles and puzzle games in general.
So, Shit Snake 2 is actually based on a true story. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know how obvious that is from playing it. Like, there's a link in the sidebar of the game that links to the comment that inspired the game.
Mm.
But it's actually based on a real story about a guy who played Shit Snake and had an argument with his girlfriend about the fact that he was playing Shit Snake rather than going to bed, and they broke up about it. Which is kind of, I mean, yeah, okay, I made a game that broke up a couple. Wow, that's a thing that happened. Um, so I guess Shit Snake is addictive in that way. Um,
Well, I wouldn't let it all on you, Alan. I'm sure it was. I'm
yeah,
sure it
no,
was going
sure.
south. but but
Hopefully that relationship would not have lasted even without Shit Snake. I mean, we'll never know for sure. Um, I think that the puzzle games I've been making lately are less addictive than kind of that kind of arcadey game where like you're playing for a score and you can replay forever, because puzzle games have an end, or at least the kind of puzzle games I make do. Like when you're talking about, so some people call Tetris a puzzle game, and I don't think that's relevant to my definition of puzzle. But my definition of a puzzle game is like you've got some pre-authored puzzles that you're trying to solve, and by the fact that they're pre-authored rather than randomly generated, there is a finite number of them, and you can get to the end of the game, and it might take you a long time if there's a lot of content or if the puzzles are really hard, but like you'll get to the end and then you go, oh yeah, I did it, yay me. Where you've got trouble generally, I think, is when there is no end, or where there's so much content that it's designed to be that you never get to the end, like something like Candy Crush. Like I think there's technically an end to that, but it's designed in such a way that it drags it out for so long that there might as well not be. Um, and like, but when you've got a game that you're just playing to score, then that's like that can get problematic because you don't have an event in the game to say, no, you're done here. There's no need for you to keep playing.
Hmm. Yeah, it's strictly about how much the player is willing to put up with before they just give up. You know,
Yeah,
it's like yeah, it's almost like a test of endurance in a way rather than a puzzle game. You know. So great. Well, I mean that's it for the five questions. I mean, where I want to know what's next for Alan Hazelden. You know, where can people find your work? Where can people find you online? You know, what this is one I ask everybody, but kind of, are there any games that you're playing right now?
okay, so at the moment, I'm working on a new puzzle game that will be like a big commercial thing, called A Good Snowman is Hard to Build, which is a puzzle game about being a monster and making snowmen. Uh, so that will hopefully be out around Christmas time. Um, so
Good timing
look
for
out
it.
for that.
You know,
Yeah.
Snowman.
You can find more about me and the games I make and all the free games I've released over the last like, 8 years at draknek.org, draknek.org. Um, as for what I'm playing, not a lot recently.
Doesn't have to be anything new. I'm
Yeah, so
playing.
I play a lot of puzzle script games. I want to touch on puzzle scripts just quickly because it's really like this is the tool that I made Cyber-Lasso in, and also You're Pulling My Leg, and also a few others. And it's a tool for making 2D turn-based games, and it's really suited to the kind of games I make. But it's also really accessible. Like you can just pick this tool up with no programming knowledge, and you can learn how to make games. And so I think it's really cool. And like a bunch of people have made some really interesting games that you can check out at puzzlescript.net.
Well, great, Alan. I appreciate it. Thank you again for doing five questions with us.
No worries. Cheers for having me.